Hello and welcome. In this video we are starting anthropological studies. As far as this particular video is concerned, we will be discussing the very important topic called as classical evolutionism. We have completed few topics. Yes, there is a lack of systematic arrangements in them, and certainly after finishing this course the primary task will be arranging them from the start to end. In this video we will start anthropological studies, classical evolutionism, which were the three scholars which are associated with it. It is E.B.TYLOR, L.H.MORGAN and James Fraser. In the last lecture, particularly the topic religion, and in that a separate video on totemism, we had heard the name of James Fraser. You people must be knowing the name of E.B.TYLOR. He has given a definition of culture. He is also called as father of British anthropology. E.B.TYLOR also have his contribution in religion, and we will study everything now. As far as L.H.MORGAN is concerned, we have not discussed about him yet. We'll start as we are starting this particular lecture. We will discuss about L.H.MORGAN and his various contribution in socio-cultural anthropology. In the branches of anthropology, we had mentioned one socio-cultural branch where his contribution is predominantly seen. As far as James Fraser is concerned, there was a book which was written by him, The Golden Bough, after reading which many people turned anthropologists. So we'll also discuss about James Fraser. Let us begin the topics. The topics that we are going to discuss today is the contribution of E.B.TYLOR. First, contribution of E.B.TYLOR. In that we will discuss about his brief life, his contribution in religion, and his contribution towards the definition of culture, linking happiness with Montagues, etc. In the next we will discuss about L.H.MORGAN to evolutionary study, the contribution of L.H.MORGAN, right, and his contribution to the anthropology, and in the last we'll discuss the James Fraser and his contribution to the classical evolutionism. Fraser's contribution, right, and after finishing this we will do a criticism of classical evolutionism. So let us begin the topic. We are starting first with classical evolutionism by E.B.TYLOR. As far as E.B.TYLOR was concerned, first he was a British anthropologist. He was the first person to define culture, and he was also the first person to systematically define culture. He was a British anthropologist and the first professional anthropologist. First professional anthropologist. His contribution have been divided into various sectors, such as his contribution in origin and evolution of religion, his contribution of defining culture, his contribution of use of statistical data in anthropology. He also have given the origin of law. He has given the contribution towards this, and he also have linked happiness. He has studied the happiness in the society, and given the how happiness is attached to a particular stage in society. So happiness. We will deal with each one of them separately and in this video only. The most famous contribution of E.B.TYLOR is his definition of culture, which is widely accepted in the discipline. As far as the definition of culture is concerned, we have discussed this definition in the topic of culture chapter 2.1. So you can go and write down the definition of culture. Here I will only mention it once or twice. E.B.TYLOR was born in Britain and was one of the pioneers in the systematic study of anthropology in the world. He was the first professional anthropologist who was offered a post of curator. He had got a post of curator in the museum, London Museum. He was the stalwart in the 19th century of classical evolutionism. So for 19th century, he was stalwart of classical evolutionism. He is called as father of British anthropology. Father of British anthropology. Now we will talk about his contribution. The first contribution is the origin of religion. In the origin of religion, we'll start with his book. See, this book is very important. As far as E.B.TYLOR is concerned, whenever the name comes E.B.TYLOR, you should also write the name of his book, which is Primitive Culture. This will definitely make your answer more attractive and distinctive. So in the year 1871, in his first book called as Primitive Culture, he gave this origin and evolution of religion. So here he made animism. He coined the term called as animism. We have a separate video on animism, animatism, fetishism, totemism, naturalism, etc. So I would request you to go and watch this video, okay, and then come back to here and resume from here. So there was a story which he had written, which E.B.TYLOR has written. So he starts with a theory that the primitive man was sensitive to environment. Tyler begin with the premise that at one point there was no religion, and from where the religion started. So he states that primitive man was sensitive to environment, which he observed, and he asked a large number of questions. So here the first thing that he assumed was inquisitive nature of primitive man. Then he says that the primitive man had dreamt. He started getting daydreaming, hallucinations, etc. And then he understood the dual existence when he got dreams and everything. This experience made him feel that he is living in two worlds, one where he lives before sleeping and the one where he lives after sleeping. Then this primitive man encountered the phenomena of death. He also understood the phenomena of death. In this phenomena, they performed two rituals or two funerals. One was green funeral and the second was dry funeral. As far as the green funeral was considered and dry, what is that? We will talk about this in couple of minutes, but before that we have to understand that when a man used to sleep, he used to watch dreams, then he used to feel the dual existence of being, or dual existence of his presence, that where first he find himself in this place, and in dream he finds himself somewhere else. So he thought of dual existence, that there are two souls, there are two souls and one body. That is what he found. So when a person used to sleep, he used to come back to life. So there was sleeping and death. For a primitive man, this two thing looks similar. They do not have the understanding of person being dead. So there is one person sleeps and the other is death. So there are two type of soul. First soul which goes and comes back, and that is what he called as sleep. And second soul which goes but does not come back. Okay, but does not come back, and that is what he calls death. So when a person used to die, they used to do a green funeral hoping that person will come back to life. But when it was not the case, then there used to be a dry funeral where there was a complete cremation, burial, or living in jungle, whatever the preferred methods they had. So the inquisitive nature and the questioning ability of primitive man, E.B.TYLOR thought of the primitive man to be logical or a rational man, right? He made him a logical and philosophical man. E.B.TYLOR considered the primitive man to be philosophical man, logical man, and a rational man. We also have talked about this dual existence, that there were two souls and one body. Through dream death experience, so this everything that we talked, right, this it is called as dream death experience. Dream death experience. So this is what he calls it as a dream death experience. Primitive people was not able to understand about soul and its power, and hence they started worshipping it. Primitive people did not know the what this particular soul was, so they started worshipping it, and hence it led to animism. Anything which is unknown to human, they either makes him frighten or amuses him or her. So animism is something where the soul is worshipped. So soul is something which is powerful, unknown, supernatural, or which is not in we cannot see it, right? So these are the things which are associated with soul. The primitive man was not able to explain how soul and power and soul lives, where does it live. So that is how the origin of animism came, that study of soul. So they also started initially worshipping the trees, animals, etc., because they thought that for soul, trees and animals are a kind of adobe where souls and the spirits lives. So soul has an independent existence, and people attributed power to the soul. So this is how the thing. Now this soul is independent, right? Independent, and hence independent, and people associated this independence with power. Now when people have associated the soul with power, now you can understand that with power the concept of fear comes. With fear the concept of being super and being inferior comes, and inferior people worship super people, right? And hence the animism and the existence of religion. Tyler concluded that There was an origin of religion which started with animism. He called totemism to be a part of animism, to be a sub part of animism. Now what is totemism? You again can go to the last video. We have two videos. In one we will have a brief discussion and a separate video on totemism, so you can go and watch the separate video. Animism was then converted into polytheism, which again moved to monotheism. About polytheism and monotheism, these are the topics, a potential topic in chapter 5, religion, and we have a separate video, so just go and watch this particular topic, right? Next contribution of E.B. Tyler is that the evolution of plow. So Tyler said that the plow was evolved or had an evolution from a stick, which was used for digging purposes. Now the next is about criticism. Criticism of Tyler's theory of origin of religion. So as far as first criticism is concerned, it sounds logical, right? Because E.B. Tyler considers a primitive man to be a philosopher, and the other scholars call it as a theory of savage philosopher. Theory of savage philosopher. Basically, E.B. Tyler consider the primitive man to be rational, logical, and philosopher. The second criticism is that E.B. Tyler could not give a scientific evidence for whatever he said. Scientific evidence was not given. So when there was no scientific evidence about his dream death experience that he had talked, dream death experience. So when he talked about the dream death experience, he could not provide a scientific evidence. So these were the criticism which were associated with his first theory, that is origin of religion. The second contribution that we have discussed was evolution of plow from a digging stick. The third is the definition of culture. As far as the definition of culture is concerned, it is widely accepted throughout the Society of Anthropology. E.B. Tyler was first anthropologist to define culture. Rather, he was the first scholar to define anthropology in a systematic manner. He was influenced by E.B. Tyler. He was influenced by August He was influenced by German scholar Gustav Klamm. He was influenced by German scholar Gustav Klamm. So he defined culture as a I'll write down the definition, and I hope you have written it down, and it is important because you should remember a few definitions, and one of them is the definition of culture. So E.B. Tyler defined culture as a complex whole of knowledge, art, belief, habits, morals, laws, customs, and all other habits and capabilities that are acquired by human being, that are acquired by human being as a member of society, as a member of society. So in this definition, straightforwardly, E.B.TYLOR denies the genetic transmission of culture and calls it as to be a complete social phenomena. See, genetic transmission of culture is not possible, right? He rules out the concept of genetic transmission, and then he focuses on the social transmission of culture. So this was his contribution in culture. Then he linked, but before that, there is a classification. Montesquieu's three stages of classification of society. So Montesquieu, there was a savage society, led to barbarism, and that finally led to civilization. So this was the Montesquieu's classification. According to E.B.TYLOR, he associated happiness with this three-stage classification of Montesquieu. So he says that happiness increases as one progress from this three stage. So he will be happier, he'll be happy, he'll be happier, and he'll be happiest. So I'm telling you that there is an improvement of happiness or increasing tendency of happiness. As far as E.B.TYLOR was concerned, he was not someone who was interested. He was not interested in the macrocultural evolution. So he just gave it and he did not give anything else. He was not into someone who would go deeper into the stream of one thing. He just wanted to touch every areas, and that is what he does. You see, there are criticism which are related to it. We'll discuss them. We'll discuss them here only. See, there was a study which was conducted. So that study, psychological research. Okay, there was a psychological research which was conducted. So it showed that the people living in the savagery or the tribal people, they were more happy. They were more happy than the people living in industrialized area or the modern people. So this theory was outrightly, it's not true. So that was the contribution of his linking it with the happiness. Then the important is the role that he gave to the statistics in anthropology. The role of statistics that he gave in anthropology. He showed the importance of statistical studies in anthropology. At that time, 282 societies, the data on the 282 societies was present, and he gave a correlation between different institutions. He gave correlation between different institutions. He said that the families or the societies which are associated with patrilocal residents are generally patriarchal, or the society which is patriarchal in nature is associated with patrilocal residence. So patrilocal residence is there with patriarchal society. He also compared the various societies of world, and this comparison of the society of the world, comparison of various societies, it was used by G.P. Murdoch. As far as G.P. Murdoch is concerned, write down his name. See, every chapter when you start, anything that can be. So just make sure that in the beginning you have a name of scholars. Like, for example, here you are writing G.P. Murdoch. So just leave one page or 1 or 2 page for every chapter where you will make a brief summary, okay, and you will write down the name of scholars, because these are the people which you are going to revise. So make sure that you have the name of every scholar, what their books, the tribe they study, okay, or their basic contribution or whatever that can be. So G.P. Murdoch used this method of comparative analysis. See, there are a lot of criticism. For example, his linking happiness with Montague's 3-stage classification of society, or his theory of evolution. But he was the first systematic writer. He was the first systematic anthropologist, and hence it makes see, if there is a material which makes sure that there is a genesis of material, the material has its genesis from another material. So here he was the first one to start this thing, and because of his efforts the various other branches came. Now for criticizing this evolutionism, diffusion will come, then historical particularism will come, then functionalism will come, then to counter this there will be a structural functionalism, and these blocks will be building the house, right? So as far as the beginning stone in anthropology was concerned, E.B.TYLOR had laid it down. So now we'll start with an important personality, that is L.H.MORGAN. As far as L.H.MORGAN is concerned, he was a socio-cultural anthropologist whose contribution we will witness him in kinship, marriage, family, etc., and so on. Definitely we'll study his contributions, right? L.H.MORGAN basically was an American. L.H.MORGAN was basically an American lawyer and was classical evolutionary thinker, and he contributed to evolution of society. You will find his works related to kinship, marriage, family, society, or political organization, right? So now we'll talk about his contribution. As far as his contribution is concerned, the first is evolution of kinship terminology. Evolution of kinship terminology. Where he divides them into two, that is classificatory and second is descriptive. As far as classificatory was concerned, he divided them into two: Malayan tribe or Malayan type and North American tribe. As far as Malayan tribe is concerned, all the collaterals, means if there is an ego is if you or I, anyone, so you have mother and you have father. Your father has brother and sister. Similarly, your mother has sister and brother. So in Mayan tribe, all the females, like collateral of this you, that is your mother, your mother's sister, and your father's sister. Okay, the person will collectively call them as mother, and father's brother and mother's brother, they'll be father. So this is Mayan type. In North American type, some collaterals were excluded. For example, only mother and mother sister were called as mother, and father's brother was called as father. So these two had a separate terminology. Okay, so is basically the second, that is this North American type. In descriptive, each one of them had separate terminology. For example, mother, father, seeing in English, mama is also uncle and chacha is also uncle. So in Hindi we'll call him as chacha, his mama, mausi, bua, right, atya or bua. So these are the descriptive terminology. So what L.H.MORGAN said, that the society or the evolution of kinship terminology started from Mayan type, which moved to North American type, from where it led to descriptive type. So this is what was the evolution of the kinship terminology according to L.H.MORGAN. Then he gave the second, his work in society, he gave evolution of entire society. Evolution of entire society. In evolution of entire society, particularly his book, which worth mentioning here, right? The book is Ancient Society. The book Ancient Society in the year 1877. So the society started from savagery, moved to barbarism, and led to civilization. In savagery, they practiced basically hunting and gathering. In barbarism, there was pottery and surplus food. In civilization, every other activity. He also gave his contribution to the study of evolution of marriage, where he gave, it started with promiscuity. In promiscuity, it means that there was a group of men who could mate with group of female. There was no anything between them, like no institution of marriage. Anyone could have sex with any other one. That comes under promiscuity. Then second is consanguineous marriage. We'll study what consanguineous and affinal marriage are when we'll study this kinship and kinship chapter. So, or even in marriage, we'll discuss about this terminologies. Then it moved to Punaluan. Punaluan, it means that brother of one group marries to a sister of another group, right? So in Punaluan, it means that brother of one group marries to sister of. Then it led to patriarchal, which led to monogamous marriages. So it started the evolution of marriage. The next topic is evolution of political organization. So according to him, there was a societas. That is the political system depending upon kinship. Societas, the political system which depends on kinship, which moved to civitas, which was independent of kinship. But still, the criticism to L.H.MORGAN's theory was not a difference. There was definitely criticism. First was conjecturalism. Whatever he was saying was in air. He did not had any proof. He did not had any evidence. He did not have any data. So that comes under conjecturalism. Second is the data which he had was secondary. The data which he had was secondary data. For example, if an administrator is staying there, he'll give the basic data. Then missionaries, the people who are traveling, etc. This is something called as a secondary data, which do not have which is not taken by a professional one. But as far as his contribution was concerned, he was one of the first anthropologists who did some of the approximating fieldwork. But you cannot outrightly say that he did not do anything. He was one of the first anthropologists who had done some of the field work. The last topic here is the contribution of James Fraser. When James Fraser came in the picture, the classical evolutionism or classical evolutionism theories, they were on the decline. So, and he was also overshadowed by E.B.TYLOR or L.H.MORGAN. So he could not give a significant contribution to the anthropology apart from his book, which is called as the Golden Bough. Evolution was carried forward in the 20th century by English anthropologists who discussed the evolution of science. Basically, James Fraser, you will find his mention in totemism, right? Totemism, which we have already discussed in the past videos, if you have gone through them. So here you will find the mention of James Fraser, that evolution of totemism, and how totemism led to evolution of science. So science is something which finds its genesis in totemism, according to Fraser. He believed that magic was the first stage of humanity which led to religion. So magic which led to religion, which led to science. So that is what James Fraser said. He also defined the theory pertaining to totemism. He wrote extensively, 10 volumes of his book. Name is Golden Bough. In the book Golden Bough, many people after reading this book, they turned anthropologist. So there is something in this book, remember the name of this, that is Golden Bough, which is associated with James Fraser. Now we'll come to the last topic, which is criticism. As far as the topic criticism is concerned, first is that they didn't had proper data, so they lacked data, or the data they had was basically secondary in nature, and they only focused on evolutionism. They ignored other process like diffusionism. They completely refused the other process. According to Westermark, simple societies have monogamy and nuclear families, but according to evolutionists, nuclear societies are the civilized one. Savagery, barbarism, and civilized. This is the evolution which was this was a stage, right, evolutionary form which was given by Montesquieu, and E.B.TYLOR associated the concept of happiness with it. And he in the L.H.MORGAN added that the societies, that civilization, this particular section had the monogamous, but Westermark found various simple societies, that is tribal societies, which were monogamous in nature. So that was the feature of civilized one. So this is the first criticism which was given by Westermark. Then Franz Boas is the second theory that we are going to discuss him, that is historical particularism. historical particularism. But now what he criticized was the lack of data and lack of field work. Then diffusionist criticized the evolutionist by saying that they completely ignored diffusion as one of the mean. Complete ignorance of diffusion as one of the potential factor for spreading of the culture or spreading of the culture in different parts. Evolutionists also neglected the human invention and creativity. So what basically this they thought that all human are same under similar situation. All human are same under similar situation, and they completely ignored the innovation capabilities of human being. The functionalist they criticized the evolutionist on the ground of conjecturalism, because they had no data, right? They had no data, and they did not even give any evidences. So functionalists also criticized evolutionist. Then there were people who are against psychic unity. It means that a person under similar situation will react similar. That may belong to any part of the world. So the people, they also were opposed because there was no proof, right? No proof to prove psychic unity. So there was also criticism on this front. Then there was a criticism against the comparative method, because the prehistoric societies cannot be compared with the modern day societies. Even there are methods by comparative method we can study the use of particular instrument that the modern society is doing and what it would have been used in the earlier societies. We assume that this the use was near about same, but still we cannot be 100% sure that, right, the use which is contemporary the society is doing was the similar in the past or not. Then there is a concept of ethnocentrism. We have discussed ethnocentrism as a separate concept in 2.1 culture. So I would request you to go and watch this ethnocentrism. Here the basic thing is, in ethnocentrism it means that a person considers a thing as superior and anything but this thing is inferior. Anything but this thing is inferior in nature, and that is what ethnocentrism says. So what this evolutionists believe, that they believe that Victorian society was superior and the highest stage of development, which shows the definite ethnocentrism. So this was the criticism which we can see for the classical evolutionism. As far as the topic is concerned, we have basically talked about the various aspects, and now the first theory, right? The first theory is something that we have completed. In the next video we'll meet where we'll discuss the historical particularism, which was given by Franz Boas, and we'll continue the lecture series. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.